100% agree. Again, we're going to have to navigate this as a church of what we should utilize, what we should not, how do we utilize it. And again, it's going to be kind of like how when smartphone came out, we're just now know the last few years how much it affects teenagers.
Yeah.
We did not know that 10 years ago. We know that now. So there is going to be a lot of unknowns when it comes to AI, and particularly when it comes to society and when it comes to church culture. What are the goods and the bads, the positive and negatives of utilizing these tools? And we'll see. Again, we're going to have to navigate to the best of our abilities, but be very mindful and very cautious as we're using it. And I think that's still a good rule of thumb.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. If it's your first time joining, welcome. We're excited to have you. And if you're a listener, part of the Longer Haul community, well, welcome back. Glad you're back with us again. Excited to jump into our topic today, interview today. Great conversation ahead here for you. So I'm excited for you to hear that. If you are not already subscribed to the show, following the show, wherever you are, jump in, do that. Head over to longerhaul.com, jump on the mailing list there, jump into the Facebook group over on the Facebook. That would be great. Today, talking about AI in youth ministry. And I know that is a broad topic. You could probably spend a lot of time talking about that and what we should do with it and what to make of it. But today, jumping in with Ryan, my good friend Ryan from over at the Youth Culture Podcast. And we're really going to talk about kind of do's and don'ts, some things that you could be using AI for to help save you time, help make you more effective, and some things you should not be doing. Maybe some things to be mindful of, cautious of as well. So just some really great practical tips for you. Lots of resources mentioned in this one that are listed in the show notes, which is over at thelongerhaul.com/episode 139, thelongerhaul.com/episode 139. So I know you're going to enjoy today. Appreciate Ryan, his heart so much for student ministry. If you've not listened or ever checked out the Youth Culture Podcast, head over and give that a listen. We do mention in this, and I will link to this as well in the show notes, an episode that he had done on AI, more on kind of dangers, cautions, things to be mindful of, kind of more of a broader picture of AI. And so that would be great for you to go and listen to as well. So I'll make sure I link to that. But I think today you're going to come away with hopefully some ideas, some practical steps and things, regardless of where you are and what you're doing and what your ministry looks like, ways that you can kind of maybe increase a bit of your time by saving some time through some things. And then just honestly, even some things to be mindful to stay away from. So anyway, great conversation. With all that said and all that out of the way, let's jump in here to today's conversation on AI in youth ministry.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, here's your host, Jody Livingston.
Well, hey, Ryan, welcome to the show. I'm pumped to have you on today. Excited for our topic, even as we dive in a little bit. For folks listening who may not know you and aren't familiar with you, man, why don't you take just a couple minutes, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your journey in youth ministry, and why you're here today. How about that?
Yeah, so very thankful to be on the podcast. My name is Ryan Sebastian. I have been many roles over the years, but currently right now I am my correct title is Associate Pastor of Discipleship and Students. I've been in my current church here in Western North Carolina, Morganton, Asheville area. For those of you who don't know where Morganton's at, it is right near Hickory, North Carolina, near Asheville, kind of dab in the middle of it. So I've been here for 3 years. Before that, I was a student pastor in Lumberton, North Carolina, which is on the east side of the state, kind of right near the border of South Carolina, literally an hour and a half from Myrtle Beach, right there near the beach. And had got to work a lot of things there. So I was there in Lumberton for about 7 years and doing ministry there, a very difficult area. If you're not familiar with Lumberton, it is high crime, high drugs, human trafficking, because it's right off of 95. It's the halfway point between New York and Florida. Very needy area. The best way I can describe it to most people, it is a mission field. That's how I viewed it more than anything. Because we kind of talked about as church staff when I was there that we're 20 to 30 years ahead where a good chunk of the country is going to be. And very hard. Churches are dying all over Lumberton and Robinson County, which is the county that's in. Had no plans of leaving, but God literally had to kick me out the door in a sense of letting me realize that He's calling me somewhere else. So me and my wife prayed and looked at and candidated at churches, and we ended up here in Morganton. Obviously, when we came here, we realized that God was opening doors, and this is where we need to be. So that's what kind of tenure of ministry a little bit. I'm excited. We have some things coming down the pipe here at our current church, and I'm excited about, and God's doing great things here. But podcasting, I started a podcast about in 2019, and it was literally just a tool. My dream or vision for it was a tool for youth pastors in my area in Lumberton. Because in that area, there's mostly bivocational pastors. Most people aren't full-time, and just finding ways to connect, provide resources for them. That's why it started the podcast. And of course, God took it and ran with it. And I've been able to, it's been growing slowly over the last 5 years and doing more things, able to connect me with things like youth specialties. Was writing articles for them for a while, and then doing a lot of things with Lifeway for a period of time. So God, and again, it's called Youth and Culture. And one of the reasons why we named it Youth and Culture was, well, I did per se, but let's go.
Because you wanted to. That's why.
Yeah, so my co-host wasn't there. But one of the reasons I named it that way is I was trying to find a way of talking into student culture. And the culture of the church. And that's why I kind of wanted to speak into a little bit. Because a lot of things when you listen to youth ministry podcasts, and there's some awesome ones out there. Of course, Jody, yours is one of them that I listened to before I started. A great podcast out there, but most of the mass majority of it was kind of teaching of here's the steps to be good at this. Here's the steps to be good at that. There wasn't a lot of speaking into church and youth and student culture at the time. Of course, now there's a whole lot more of that talk now. But 5 years ago, there wasn't much of that. So that's kind of the reason why we named it that way and speaking to that. And of course, Jody had you on the podcast early on and during that time period. And of course, David Pinkham, my co-host, joined shortly after. Not long after I started it, and God's just been taking it and running with it from there.
That's cool, man. Well, I'm excited you're here. If you're listening, by the way, and I've been fighting a fierce chest cold, and we were joking beforehand. My voice sounds a little bit, not so great. If I hit a certain octave, I'm going to sound like the junior high kid on Thursday at camp. It's going to be interesting and fun for all of us. Anyway, so I was listening to your podcast because, I do. And you guys tackled the topic of AI a little bit. And so I reached out and said, hey, why don't you come on and let's talk about it, maybe tackle it from a little bit of a different angle in terms of kind of what are some positive, good, helpful, maybe even some time-saving, ethical ways that it could be used. And then maybe even some things that maybe we should steer away from. That we would say, hey man, don't do that. Like that's just shortcutting your ministry, or that's not full and beneficial for you. So that's kind of the trajectory of us today. Ryan, when you think of AI, where it is now and where it seems to be going quickly, just funny because in probably a year, this podcast will be completely obsolete and not needed. when you think of some ways that maybe you see youth pastors using AI in maybe a healthy way, what are some things that come to mind?
For healthy aspects, again, when we talk again, when I want to preface it to say this, that I am by no means an expert in AI. So to make sure that that's clearly understood, I just love to research and love to study. And so I want to preface that I'm not an expert. But with that being said, I do think things that could, for us being a good aspect, things that we can utilize things well, is things like communication. AI can help churches overall, and you can take the concept of you're a local church, but you can take it down even more into student ministry. It can help to improve communication with members by like tailoring interaction with congregants. So if someone goes to your webpage or whatever system of communication you're using, it can tailor interactions a certain way. So in other words, and again, we don't like to chat. In other words, if you go to like any company and you're typed into a chat box, 9 out of 10 times, that's not a real person.
Sure. Okay? Sure.
It's got a picture of somebody who seems like it's a real person, but in reality, you're actually chatting with an AI. So having ways of communication to where if somebody comes in, let's say a parent comes in, goes to your website, and it's more communication tools are coming out. So this may change over time, but any system that you're using, they can type in a question, like a question about an event, a question about your student ministry, and then it would actually, based off of what you're feeding the AI, give an answer that's specifically connected to your ministry or your church, that type of thing. So there's things like that. It can be good communication tools, and that's changing every single day and improving every single day. So to give an accurate picture is almost impossible.
Right.
For that. But the future of it, in my opinion, is, again, I think it's going to be tailored on Instagram. I think it's going to be added, which are some AI on social media. I think it's going to be added to Facebook. Or Meta. I think all these social media outlets are going to be utilizing this type of tool. So I think over time, you're going to have the ability to ask questions with an AI that's connected to who you are as a ministry, and that AI is going to be able to answer questions and communicate for you. So there's some good aspects of that. There's also a negative aspect of that too, which I can get to later. But I do think that's one thing that's going to be coming down the pipe and currently going on right now. Also analyzing feedback to improve your ministry. So an AI when you do a feedback or rating, like all aspects have a rating or review, an AI can actually analyze that and tell you, hey, this is the things that you're weak in, things you're not doing well. So an AI that's going to be seeping in, I think, more in all business world, but also I think eventually in church world. I think that is good as well. So communication overall, I think we'll see that over time can be utilized well within any ministry within the church.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, I was thinking as you're talking communication wise, and if you struggle to write emails well, all right, if you just struggle to communicate with parents, man, taking what you want to say, plugging that into a ChatGPT or something like that, and then asking it to help you, man, that can make you sound not necessarily smarter. Okay, we want to be authentic, but clearer in what you're trying to say. So for me, this is me, a real life example. Oftentimes, I will go into ChatGPT or something like that, and I'll say, hey, I need to write an email to parents about an upcoming event. Ask me all the questions that you need to have all the information that you need in order to write the email. And then I say, I want it to be professional, professional email, but relatable, and it needs to go to, and it's written to parents of 12 to 18-year-olds. And then what it does is it spits me back a ton of questions that I don't think about that need to be communicated unless I'm asking my wife, and then she tells me. And then I answer the questions, and then it spits me out an email. And if I don't like it, I'll tell it to reword it or change the tone, and then I'll take that, and then from there then I can kind of tailor that to my own self.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I use something similar. I don't use ChatGPT for that, but I do use something similar. It's still an AI.
Yeah.
But I use Grammarly.
Oh, yeah. Grammarly. I do that now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a subscription, paid subscription to Grammarly, and that's where all my communication goes in. Partly because, too, is that even though I have never been diagnosed, I'm pretty sure I am slightly dyslexic. My son has been diagnosed for that. I'm pretty sure I am too, because I cannot spell worth a lick. And so I'll type up something into Grammarly, and what I like about Grammarly, the same thing that the AI built into it will spit out, hey, what kind of tone do you want this in?
I love that.
And then it will reword, say, hey, I see where you're communicating, this sounds better.
Mm.
And so it gives you a suggestion of where you can reword it to make it more professional, more relatable, having a certain tone to it, things like that. So most definitely, for communication, I use AI all the time.
You mentioned Grammarly. Everything everyone knows of Chat. Another one that I will often go to is called Perplexity. And I would say if it's more of a creative thing that I'm trying to use, like brainstorming or like what we're talking about, that's normally like kind of a Chat, a Grammarly kind of thing. If I need something a little more factually driven, then that's a Perplexity kind of thing, because it'll actually cite where the information's coming from. It's not just spitting out whatever. Are there other ones that come to mind for you that you find yourself using?
Well, the Grammarly is probably number one. ChatGPT is another good one for communication. Mainly for communication, there's probably biggest two, but also AI is in any type of communication nowadays. AI is already built into it, whether you realize it or not. Yeah. So like your work, you're using Google Docs. So there's already AI built into that. Using even Word for Microsoft, there's AI now already built into that.
Even like Canva.
Yes, right, AI is built into that.
Which I know a lot of folks use because it's free. Crazy.
Yeah, so a lot of people, without even realizing they're utilizing AI, they're utilizing AI. Whether it's communication, again, I would go as far as saying that even graphics, you mentioned Canva, graphics is a form of communication as well. Totally. So even with Canva utilizing AI, and I mentioned this on an episode you were talking about when on my podcast, talking about AI and the dangers of it. We did talk. One thing I mentioned is that Canva is one of the ones who are going ahead of the game and putting protections in it.
Yeah,
and
which is
AI.
why I love that, to use that, right? Because you're right. They're kind of putting up some rails for folk.
Yeah, very much so. So probably those we mentioned are probably the biggest ones I see used for communication. There's probably hundreds and hundreds more. Again, because it's hard to track, it's hard to keep up with, and literally, to your point, it can change literally a year from now.
Yeah.
Everything we just talked about.
We'll have to do this again in a year because everything will be gone.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think communication is such a key. I love that you start there because, in my head as I was thinking through, that was probably on my list, maybe. But I love that because I know that's an area that youth pastors struggle with so much. And so being able to kind of navigate that's really good. That's great. What else was on your list there?
It's one thing too, is this, going back to Canva and some other things, is content creation. Can be very helpful with content creation. Again, as long as you making sure that you have guardrails against that, because it goes, the other side of it is you can utilize it for dangerous things as well when it comes to content. But things like blogs, articles, if your church does a lot of that, there's a lot of AI aspects that can help in that process of building blogs, building articles, images. Again, go back to utilizing graphics. Now with things talking about Canva, you pick on Canva for a minute, is if you can sit there and say, I really need a certain element for this graphic. I can't find it. I'm searching all over the internet. I don't have time to spend hours trying to find a certain image. You can go on Canva, type in what you want, and it'll give you an AI-generated image to fit what you're trying to do for your graphics. So for content creation, it's very, very useful, very good, especially in church spaces. I think there's less. Again, this is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt, but I do think there's less graphic content compared for churches that can be utilized for churches compared to like more secular content.
Yeah.
It's like for like still images, things like that. I think it's a little bit more limited. So this actually provides an opportunity to use an AI to generate images you need for graphics. Same thing with videos. If you need a video element, there is video generation AI that you can type in. Say, I really am looking for something like this. Type in what you need, and the AI will actually generate a video they can use for bumpers, that you can use even for student ministry. I would say that for videos, you probably utilize this more for student ministry, even for what we call big church. So same thing with audio. It can help you with AI can actually clear up audio for you. So there's tons of different things. Like right now, like I forget what it's called. Adobe has an aspect on their website. I forget what it's called. I can slip in my mind right now. To where you can take in your audio as a podcaster and load it up, and it cleans it up. That's an AI that does that. So there's a lot of, for content creation, there's a lot of good things that the church can utilize and student ministers can utilize to help their ministry, streamline their ministry a little bit faster. Because I don't know about you, Jody, I'm just early on in doing, when I was full-time, I've been doing ministry for, seems like about 20 years, but full-time ministry, I was my own graphic designer. I was in a small church, and that was before I knew about Canva.
Bro, I go back to clip art, right? When you're like making copies of stuff, y'all don't even know. Like half y'all listening don't even know what we had to go through to get a newsletter done. Okay. There was no AI. There was a copy machine and tape. That's what there was.
And so I had, and good thing is that I love to learn. So it was not as hard of a learning curve for me. But I had to teach myself graphic design just to build graphics, build things. Because I was in a smaller church, we didn't have the staff. Like I couldn't tell a staff person, "Hey, I need you to do this." I was my secretary.
Yeah.
So I had to create all this. So to go back from where I was then starting ministry to where I'm now, utilizing Canva to where I can just build all these templates, build what I want to build, tell the AI to do certain things, something that would take hours to make a graphic can take 15, 20 minutes now.
Yeah, so we've mentioned chat, which I'm sure will come up again.
Yeah.
I mentioned Perplexity, Grammarly's, AI. We've talked about Canva. When you say video, when you mentioned Adobe, like are there other places specifically that you would say, hey, this is one I know of that folks could look at for some of those things?
Well, for some of those things, what I would do is again, there's so many ones. It's hard to just type in video AI video generators. That's all you have to type in, and there's literally hundreds. So it's really kind of hard to pinpoint like one or two. Again, I don't utilize video generators very often. I just know they're out there with all the research I've done with this. But for one, there's hundreds. The one thing, again, the negative side of that, there is a negative side, and we can get to that a little bit later, of utilizing video generators and image generators as well, that we kind of tackled on our podcast, the Youth and Culture podcast. But as long as you're doing things the right way, those are good resources.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think, I was trying to think through it. What are ways that I'm using it now? Because I find myself probably using it more and more to save time on things.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'll give you some examples of things I'm doing, maybe beyond even what we talked about so far. I will use it to write small group questions because I'm really bad at writing small group questions, like really bad at writing small group questions. And our small groups are kind of message based. So, I kind of, and everything's in the prompt, right? Like you've got to nail the prompt. And so you play around with that prompt a little bit, but you need to give it some constraints. Sometimes if you don't know, again, I'll say, hey, here's what I want to do. Ask me questions so that I get it right. And then when I nail it, I'm like, okay, write that as a prompt so that I have that. But I'll for sure use it to write small group questions. Say I need, 7 questions on Luke chapter 4. I'm teaching Luke chapter 4 to an audience of 12 to 18-year-olds. I need them to be application driven and written on 10th grade reading level. And it spits and I'll ask it to give me 20, and I'll pick 7 I like. And if I need to reword some, I can. Man, that saves me so much time because I'm terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like absolutely terrible. So I'll do that. I will sometimes use it for, so I'm an alliteration guy. If you've listened to the podcast for a long time, you know that because Chris and I used to argue about this all the time. So like if I'm writing a message, I really want my points to either be similar or alliterated for my benefit. It's helpful for me as the teacher. But sometimes I really struggle to do that. And a thesaurus has been my best friend for a long time, but it takes forever. So after I've built the message out and I kind of have my, hey, here's my whatever points, I'll kind of throw those in and say, hey, I've got these points for my message from this chapter. I would like to I'd like these to be alliterated or at least phrased similarly. Give me 5 options. And then I'll usually pick from a combination of those. That's super helpful. Again, it's not writing my message because that we would put on the no list, right? But helping me kind of brainstorm maybe how those points could be phrased better and clearer has been really helpful. So I don't know. Are there things that you're finding yourself using them for? We mentioned images. We mentioned that are like saving you some time on some of those things.
Yeah, you just mentioned something that's actually very useful for ChatGPT and some other things as well. Is when you're stuck, because I'm not good with small group questions either. So that's where I'll land as well. But kind of just saying, hey, I want questions on this. Help me. It's more like a tool to help you. Yeah. So when you see it as when you utilize things like that as a tool, like ChatGPT, it's awesome. It's useful. But going to your point earlier, when you're utilizing to write a message, which I also have people I know who have used it for that aspect, it's not. But yeah, so using it to help you think through things, I think it's great. It's a great tool, especially when you have a hard time processing. I see my points, see my lesson. There's something there's something wrong with this, and I can't put my finger on it as far as the way it sounds, the way it's worded, and even ChatGPT helps you with that. Absolutely. It's the same thing as what's the difference between that and taking your lesson, going to Joe Blow,
right,
a friend, and saying, hey, read this.
Yeah, how could I say this different?
Yes, it's the same aspect. So, because the argument I get sometimes from people, I don't get it often, is, hey, that's wrong because you're not thinking, it's not your content, it's not your thought processes, you're stealing it from somebody else or computer AI. Yeah. But the same arguments, like, what's the difference again for me to give this to you and you to give me some ideas, and asking you for ideas? There is no difference. So when you utilize I utilize things like that. So what I would recommend.
Ryan, do you think that's interesting that you say that? Do you think that those same people would have that opinion about a youth pastor who's buying a message series from somewhere and just teaching it? They'd probably be fine with that, right? They wouldn't think anything of it.
Well, it depends. They're all over the spectrum when it comes to that aspect. And again, I get it. I understand But youth ministry world is very much a curriculum-based world. It's much different. There's a difference between utilizing a curriculum, again, which is things that's written for you, utilizing curriculum for youth ministry. Then there's a difference between that and I would say then your lead pastor buying sermons and preaching bot sermons.
Right.
Big difference between
it's
the two.
So common in youth ministry, though, right? Like, there's so many places that you're going to buy message series,
mm-hmm.
and they're going to give you your bumper video and your game and your graphics and the message, and they're like, "Oh, don't use this word for." But come on, man! Like, study, right? Like that's what that's the whole thing with the AI thing. That, to your point, is like, this doesn't take the place of your study. This is another
mm-hmm.
tool in your toolbox as you study.
I agree, but I do think it can go to your point about curriculum a little bit. That can actually, it can lead for you to be lazy.
Yeah,
it can lead to that way. Same thing as AI can lead to being lazy. If you utilize it in a way that it's writing your messages, utilizing it that way,
that's a no-no.
That is a no-no because again, there's and I've had this argument for many times with good friends of mine. Some of them are good friends, some of them not. But
some of them used to be.
Yeah. But have this type of argument about about AI writing your stuff, and I'm like, I don't agree with that, man. There's a point where you got to allow the Holy Spirit to work through you in your messages. Even with a curriculum, if you're using like curriculum, there's many times I'm utilizing curriculum and I'm like, man, I don't like the way this message is going, and I've had to rewrite it from scratch.
Yeah.
So just because you have the tools doesn't mean you utilize it to be lazy and not allow the Holy Spirit to work through you as you're speaking to your students.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I always tell guys, or when I'm talking to youth ministers, guys or girls, I'll tell them, like, what you teach should be an overflow of your heart from your study.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's an H.B. Charles quote that I saw. It's like, I'm going to butcher this, but it's like, the preacher who doesn't like preparation likes performing.
Yep.
Or something like that. And I'm like, man, that's so true. And it's such a temptation today.
Yes.
Right. With the ability to platform yourself. So I'll get on a soapbox real quick on that. I think if people have listened to the show for a while, they'll know that is not a new soapbox for me. Like, write your own messages, do your own study.
AI, you mentioned a good point. I think AI kind of filters into this as well, is with the drive in our culture to have a platform. Again, we both have a platform, so we're speaking into this in that way. But with the drive to have a platform to be seen, to be known, that type of mentality has seeped into ministry, particularly pastoral ministry. The idea of want to be seen and known. And so I think the temptation with AI, particularly AI, is we want to be a certain personality in the way we speak. We want people, and we want to speak a certain way, not because we want to necessarily reach students and disciple students or disciple our churches, but it's more of a selfish. I want to be seen as an awesome communicator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody would actually say that out loud, but it is a temptation for every single one of us in our culture today, because that is almost the drive in all throughout our culture, even church culture.
Yeah. I think this might even sound a little contradictory, so I'm going to try to clarify this in a way that doesn't sound like, because I agree with what you're saying completely. I was just thinking tools that we use in regards to that. And I would say this, I'm not, obviously, you mentioned it. We both have a podcast. We both have whatever. So there's a platform there. I'm not anti-platform because I think to some extent, I mean, the Great Commission would ask us to platform ourselves in the lives of people in front of us.
Correct.
That's very different than growing an audience and posting clips everywhere. And I'm not against it, but if that's your main goal in the heart of your heart, like that's a problem. I think of, I was thinking of an AI tool called Opus Clip.
Yeah.
Where you could dump a long form video in, it'll chop them up. I use Riverside for the podcast. It does similar things, something called Magic Clips. So you're not going through trying
Headliner does the same thing.
Headliner does the same thing. I was trying to think, there's one that we use at the church and I cannot remember the name of it, but you dump in the YouTube video of the message, the full message, and then it will take it and write for you kind of devotionals for the week based off of the message. And that's great. And then small group questions, it kind of dumps a lot of that stuff. Man, time saver, right? And again, if you don't like them, tweak them. I can tell you what, man, that thing's pretty good. It's scary good.
I haven't heard of AI. Again, the AI thing changes all the stinking time, so it's hard for me to keep up with. So that is actually interesting. That is a tool that I am not aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it. Like our, communications folks do that, but if I teach live on the weekend, then they'll kind of send you, hey, here's the proof of what's going on this week. Do you want to change any of them? But I'm telling you, like 3 or 4 times in, I think I've ever changed it. Like, this is scary good. This is better than what I would write for sure. But again, time saver, right? And we talk so much. I think forever in youth ministry, you've heard people say, especially in student ministry, like relationships matter so much. And in the past, I think, and maybe this still happens now, that takes such a priority that everything else falls along the wayside. You're investing so much in relationships and your students that you're not communicating with parents well. You're not planning things out well. You're not taking the time to prepare for your messages well. You're not writing good small group questions because you're last minute with them. All of these things, aside, can help you prepare faster and be more competent in those areas so that you don't have to compromise maybe that relational time.
Yeah, absolutely. That, again, any tool that you use, any tool, it's all about how you use it.
Yeah.
Again, there's a lot of negative aspects of AI, but again, AI is a tool. It depends on how you use it. Depends how well when it comes to saving time. Absolutely, AI. And over the years, I would say, again, I'm a big administration guy. It's just the way my mind works. It's just the way I am wired. What takes most people 8 hours to complete takes me half the time. It's just the way I'm able to grind to get things done quickly. But it's a skill that was learned over time,
right?
Because I was in a small church, for when I first got into full-time ministry. Did not have a secretary. I was my own secretary, and so I had to literally learn how to get things done in timely fashion, how to grind. But part of that too was some of again, I was still doing a lot of relational aspects. That didn't go away.
Yeah.
But man, if I had AI back then, some of these tools back then, I would have so much time to spend with students, and then I would ever. It's just in no way to compare the two.
Yeah.
So AI is a phenomenal tool when it comes to time, and in order to have better relational ministry, a better relational ministry, it is absolutely great tools.
Yeah. What are some things we kind of talked about? A couple, maybe we've hinted at a little bit, or we talked about the message thing. Some things that come to mind. We'd say, "Hey, this is a no-go."
Probably, I would. Okay, messages is one. Another thing is I kind of talked about this a little bit on the podcast or my podcast a little bit when we're talking about AI. I don't want to get too much into it. There's a lot of information with this, but probably the dangers you got to be careful with is that's connected to AI, not just us using it, but connected to AI is how we're utilizing social media.
Yeah.
The reason why I say that is with AI image generators and video generators, which are awesome tools, most of them don't have safeguards. So with that, we have to understand that there's a lot of pedophiles, and pedophilia is actually being made through these tools. So we do have to safeguard our kids, how we post pictures of our students online, that type of thing. So that's the negative aspect of that. One of the negatives. One aspect of us too of a no-no for us personally, and us figuring out, it's not really a no-no, but us kind of navigating to figure it out, is we can become technologically dependent on AI. And you got to be very careful of that as well. The reason being is that if you get so dependent on AI to write your material, not write material, but write different aspects or help you with certain things, over time, it does help you. It does cause you the ability to actually process information yourself, of learning how to think through and write certain things yourself, whether it be small group questions. You can fill in the blank with that. When it comes to making videos, you got to be very careful, because remember, when technology, and let's say if you lose, okay, my situation, we just dealt with a hurricane. Okay, fill in the blank. So we didn't have power, we didn't have any technology for a while. So if you're so technology dependent, the way you do church, it's like, oh, what do we do? And again, we're in the early stages of that. So that's not an issue now, but 20 years down the road, that's a conversation. That we're going to have. So learning to navigate that, to think through that, is one thing. The next thing is, I would say human interaction can be limited, depending on how far you go with this. Like for instance, when you do stuff online, where AI is answering your Instagram messages, which I see that happening in the future. And we're getting closer to that, where it's answering your messaging for your business or ministry, for social media or website, where it's answering questions for you. It's removing a human interaction from it. And again, that can be added in 20 years. That can be probably 20%, 50%, 100% worse. I don't know. But that's something to think through, is how far are we willing to use AI and not have human interaction with people, again, relational ministry. How far are we willing to go with it? So that's something to think through. And again, there's no answers to that question right now, but it's just something to think through as we're going through it. Because again, using AI to answer questions is an awesome tool. In fact, there's something coming out now. There's some ministries utilizing this to where you can utilize ChatGPT style AI on your website. So when somebody comes in and asks questions about the gospel, it is flat out walking them through the gospel right there online, right on your website. Phenomenal tool. But it's navigating, okay, what's good for AI to use for, what's good for actually having a human interaction with, and kind of figuring that out, answering that question with. That type of thing. So that stuff is kind of why we have to navigate through and think through as the next 10, 20 years, because this AI is only going to get more dominating.
It's not going away.
Even the last 5 years, just give 5 years to see where we were 5 years ago, where we are now with AI is unreal. Like how quickly it's moving in a certain direction.
I think if you could I'm going to kind of summarize what I think we've talked about today. I think what we've said is AI can be a great tool to help you brainstorm. It can be a great tool to help you creatively, especially if you struggle with some of that. It can be a great tool to help you save time on some things, but not a shortcut. Like, use it to be a time saver, but not a shortcut. Leverage it in a healthy way. Have clear boundaries on your own. Be mindful of what even you're doing, kind of how that affects AI beyond yourself even. And so I would say, like, don't be afraid of it, but be wise with it. Is probably the way I would say that.
I know, absolutely, 100% agree. Again, we're going to have to navigate this as a church of what we should utilize, what we should not, how do we utilize it, and again, it's going to be kind of like how when smartphone came out.
Yeah.
We're just now know the last few years how much it affects teenagers.
Yeah.
We did not know that 10 years ago. We know that now. So there is going to be a lot of unknowns when it comes to AI, and particularly when it comes to society and when it comes to church culture. What are the goods and the bads, the positive and negatives of utilizing these tools? And we'll see. We're going to have to navigate to the best of our abilities, but be very mindful and very cautious as we're using it. And I think that's still a good rule of thumb. But understand that it's totally fine to use, but be cautious and have boundaries and think through things logically as we're utilizing these tools.
Yeah, I love that. Ryan, if folks want to connect with you after this, where's the best way to do that?
Probably the best way to connect is you can shoot me an email, probably Ryan Paul Sebastian at gmail.com. You can email me directly there. I'm also, I personally don't do a lot of social media, but you can connect to the podcast and connect with me there at the Youth and Culture Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can message me directly on there as well. Me and my co-host, David Pinkham. But yeah, that's where best ways you can connect with me. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. For those of you who are on LinkedIn, I'm there as well. Yeah, those are the avenues, the best way to connect with me.
That's great. Man, thanks for jumping on. I'll have links to I'm going to have to go back and listen, like all the tools we talked about and mentioned and thrown out, as well as to the Youth and Culture podcast. I'm going to link specifically to the AI episode as well, so folks can go back because we referenced that a few times. So you can go over and check that out. Ryan, man, thanks for spending some time jumping on today. I appreciate it. It's been great.
Absolutely. It's been awesome to be here.
All right, man. We'll catch you later. Well, there you have it. A great conversation, I think. Appreciate Ryan, his willingness to jump on and tackle a topic like that. For sure, hopefully a lot of takeaways for you, practical things as you kind of listen, you're making notes. I'll have all of those resources that we mentioned, and there were a ton of them listed in the show notes page, as well as some links to things. Again, if you haven't listened to Ryan's episode on AI, I'd encourage you to go back and take a listen to that. I'll link to that as well in the show notes. But thanks for jumping in, listening today. Grateful for you, thankful for what you're doing, thankful for you to give your time to listen and to be a part here of the Longer Haul Youth Ministry community. So we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast. Before you go, hit that subscribe button to keep these conversations coming. For notes, resources, and to join our community, swing by thelongerhaul.com. Stay encouraged, keep making a difference, and remember, we're in this for the longer haul. Catch you on the next episode.